Okay, I am live and super impromptu. Not expecting anyone to join because I gave no warning to this. The only thing I am going to do is take this opportunity because I'm speaking to myself at the moment, bearing in mind that people are going to find this and play it back. But take this opportunity to just make sure everything is set up the way it's supposed to be. So take a little bit of leisure time to get stuff in the right location now. How's everyone doing? It's Sunday afternoon, nearly evening over here in the UK. Let me know what time of day it is where you're hailing from, and give a little shout out if you managed to join the chat. I have one guest in the audience so far, which is great. I'm going to get straight down to it, to be honest with you. So if you do join, you're not going to be waiting very long before I get straight down to business, because I want to cover quite a few topics today, quite a few interesting topics today for this live stream. So As Valiant has come in the chat and said Tinubu is both. Yeah, so obviously you're responding to the name of the live stream, in which I've basically asked the question, or posted the question: is Nigeria's president Tinubu evil or just incredibly stupid? And hey, how you doing, Has Valiant? It's at this point, I thought he was really evil. Just earlier in the year, following the bombing of Nigeria, I was like, no, I think this guy is actually nefarious. He's actually really evil. But having heard him speak, I don't know if I'm leaning towards him just being really, really stupid. I feel like he's Nigeria's biggest enemy when it comes to leadership. And by the way, we're going to cover the Tinubu topic in detail a little bit later. There's a few topics I want to cover before it. But since we're here, and since Hans Valiant posited the possible answer, I think Nigeria's biggest enemy to progression is old leaders. Tinubu is an old, dusty leader. Okay, he's an old, dusty leader with an old, dusty colonial mindset, a white is right mindset. He was born into a privileged class of selfish people who worshipped and idealized the Western Hemisphere. And he is a perfect reflection as to why Nigeria should not be voting into presidency anyone who is over the age of 60 moving forward. No one. Because the things that this moron is willing to do in the name of I don't know what it's even in the name of, but the things that this moron is willing to do have surpassed, every time he does something new, it surpasses my expectations in regards to how evil and stupid he is. It's like he has no lower boundary. He has no sense of Pan-Africanism. He has no sense of national pride. He's got no sense of patriotism. He's just like, how can you be that old and still that selfish? To me, it beggars belief. And people normally hit an age where, normally that you hit those twilight years and you start to view your mortality becomes a bit more real. And as a result, people just kind of throw off the tethers and say, no, I'm going to do what I think is right. That's kind of what Mugabe did. Mugabe did spent a long period of his life playing ball with the West. And then he hit his twilight years. He'd realized he'd been in power for a bit. And he was like, no, I'm going to do what's right by my people. Yeah, I don't give a damn. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm kicking them out. They can't hold me over a barrel anymore. Lauren Gbagbo did the same in Ivory Coast. Tinubu, it's like he is he's an anomaly even for a Nigerian president, and we've never had really in our history a good president. At least Ghana can fall back on a couple of goodies in there, Nkrumah, and Nigeria has just had disaster after disaster, and a population. People diss Nigerian people, but how is it the Nigerian population must be something special to have had such consistently bad leadership and to still be able to have any level of production or productivity in that population is unbelievable. So Nigerians amaze me every day, because the fact that people are even productive in that nation with their level of governance, the corruption that surrounds its governance, you know, I think Tinubu's very aware that everyone's very aware that the nation in Africa that is in most, you know, it definitely has the greatest need for some kind of an uprising, a coup d'etat, so to speak, is Nigeria. That it's needed that for a long time. It needs the entire removal of its parliamentary system because the corruption is thick and it goes to the core. So, yeah, I'll check out what you've just said there. You said Google Efumero. Yeah, I will check that out. And it will make sense. I'm not going to do it right now. I know you want me to do it right now, but I want to kind of get on with the stream. Tinubu is going to get tackled, but he's not going to get tackled with immediacy, because there's a couple of things that I need to do before we get there. So let's start off with, actually, before we move on to Tinubu, let's start off with topic number one. And topic number one on the agenda today is to deal with something that I thought I'd tackled on the channel, but actually I looked back and I'd recorded the video, edited the video, and for some reason I never put it out. But I did want to put out a video about the whole Senegal versus Morocco and AFCON situation. Okay. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Senegal won the African Nations Cup. Yeah. So Senegal won the African Nations Cup in the face of blatant footballing corruption and a blatant attempt and effort for them not to win. They won it against all odds. After the match, they were attacked. They were racially attacked. Senegalese fans and players were racially attacked by mobs of these Moroccan, I'm not going to say Arabs because they're not, these mixed Slavic, Moroccan, mixed coastal Africans decided they were going to attack the Senegalese team in a scene that the most disgusting scene I've ever seen. Being someone who's watched football my entire life, I've never seen anything as revolting as that. And then following that, CAF, the Confederation of African Football, I think it stands for, decided that they were going to fine Senegal as a result of those scenes, in probably the most racist decision I've ever come across in my life. They decided that Senegal were more to blame for the violence that was bestowed upon them than the country that was hosting them, who clearly can be seen on camera attacking them. And that wasn't the final insult, because the final insult came when, after all of this played out, the CAF then decided they were going to strip Senegal of the African Nations Cup and give it to Morocco, because Senegalese players marched off the pitch because of the corruption, the consistent corruption that was taking place throughout that match, and a penalty that Morocco were granted that they didn't deserve. It's absolutely disgusting. And I feel like everyone's kind of like, the rhetoric I'm getting is, oh, well done, Senegal. Although, by the way, Senegal have done something that I think is totally gangster, and we're going to get onto that. They did something that was totally gangster. So I love the way Senegal have been dealing with this throughout. What I don't like is the way that the larger African community haven't been showing overt support for Senegal. For me, the way CIF is dealing with this, African nations should boycott the African Nations Cup, and they should boycott the CAF. They should just boycott it. It's very, very simple. Just boycott it. Yeah, there's no way. Like, as a Nigerian, I'm sure as other Africans, just boycott it. Say, no, look, you're not going to insult a black African team like this. You're not going to insult us. You're not going to make it so that it's okay to attack black people when they come to your stadium, which is essentially what the CAF did. So anyway, I've been rambling on enough. Let's just get through a couple of videos, have a few stopping points, and then we're going to get to the very, very gangster thing that that Senegal did, which we're which they're already discussing in the chat. So let's get on to this. By the way, just hit a 1 in the chat if the audio and everything is fine and it's working when I hit play, so that I know that everything's good and everyone can hear me loud and clear. So let's play this. So here, let's just read them here. CAF has issued severe sanctions following chaotic scenes during the 2025 African Cup of Nations. And I want you to see what's going on here. This is not only Moroccan fans, these are staff at the pitch. Thank you for the ones, by the way, so I know that the audio is working fine. This is staff at the pitch. There's clear, crystal clear, 4K footage of staff attacking the players. So everyone was attacking the players. No one was the Senegalese. No one was trying to defend them here. The scenes were absolutely disgusting. Morocco should not only have been fined, but they should be banned from the African Nations Cup for a couple of cups. But CAF didn't see anything wrong with these mobs of Moroccan players trying to kill Black African players simply because of the fact they didn't like the fact they lost the match. The problem was the pushback from other African nations was zero. Everyone was like talking about it, but it's kind of like, how difficult would it have been for the other African teams to get together and say, no, we're boycotting? Because that's the only thing they're going to listen to. They're only going to listen to, the other African team saying, no, it's a boycott. We are boycotting. Yeah, you can't treat us like that. It's unbelievable. So look at this, imposing the $615,000 fine on Senegal and a $315,000 fine on Morocco. So Senegal got fined double what Morocco got fined. Senegalese were fighting for their lives inside a Moroccan stadium filled with these friggin' animals, these Slavic mixed animals who are trying to attack them for absolutely no reason. And the Senegalese coach, was ordered a 5-match suspension because he was the one that said, and I respect to him, because this is a black man that stands up business. He was like, nah, look, we're leaving. You're not gonna treat us like some pieces of shit. And this is what they want. They want to normalize the maltreatment of, and in the world of football, by the way, those of you who are not maybe exposed to soccer, as you call it in America, you have to understand this kind of dog whistling and dehumanization of black players is rampant in Europe. This is European style racism. I know this was taking place in North Africa, but this is like textbook European style racism, where everyone can see it taking place. The amount of racial insults that team were experiencing during that match would have been something that would make your brain fry. But everyone just expects African players to just take it. Just take the fact that they're racially abusing you. I don't think that any black player should have to put up with a single racial slur. If he hears a single racial slur as a black player, he should be able to just say, I'm done. I'm not coming here to be abused. I wouldn't take it in real life. You call me the M-word in real life, you're losing teeth. So why am I going to take it? Some random dude in a me doing my job as a footballer. But they expect you to just take it and to just get on with it. And we receive no empathy, we receive no sympathy, we receive no understanding. And actually we're punished when we stand on business. Like this man who stood on business was fined individually a ridiculous amount of money, which I hope the Senegalese Football Federation covered on his behalf. Several players from both sides received bans. Now, if you didn't see, it was the Moroccan players who were picking up the Senegalese goalkeeper's towels and throwing them so that the goalkeeper couldn't wipe his hands, and then saying, "Oh, we didn't want them doing witchcraft." Why are you worried about witchcraft? Who looks like they're more possessed with demons? Do the black players look like they're possessed with demons, or do these stupid Slavic dirty bastards look like they're the ones who are possessed with demons? Yeah, these hybrids of the Black Sea slave trade, who turn into Rottweilers every time they see someone with dark skin, and they're talking about, oh, you know, I don't give a shit. You could talk all your crap about Islam, this, that, and the other, but there's nothing in you that portrays any level of religious piety, religious humility, love. All you are dirty friggin' animals. You're dogs. And you're talking about you're worried about witchcraft. You're dogs. You are demons. The devil lives in you. So how are you going to be worried about witchcraft? You are literally the embodiment of Satan himself. These people disgust me. And Morocco protested the final outcome of the final. You know, this is the thing. So they're angry that they lost. No one forced them to miss a penalty doing some stupidness, but they're angry that they lost. And obviously we know eventually the CAF are going to fold to this. So there you go. There's a little bit of a backstory for those of you who didn't know. Senegal wins. Morocco absolutely can't stand it. So why am I sitting here so very proud of my Senegalese brothers and sisters? Well, what am I very, very proud of? Let's have a look. We're going to have a look here at why I'm so proud. This is the kind of thing that I feel needs to happen.
You see the Moroccan national soccer.
Oh, this isn't it. Sorry. If you haven't watched, by the way, watch Zevi's breakdown. We're not going to watch this because it's a little bit long. There's a YouTube channel called Zevi, XEVI. He has this breakdown, says how Morocco became the most hated team in soccer. Well, you'd think that, but clearly they're not, because clearly the CAF are taking their side, these dirty rats. But anyway, that's an aside. Have a look at this video. It will make you laugh, but it's a little bit too long for us to cover today. It's 8 minutes long. We're not going to look at that, but I want to show you why I'm so proud of these guys. Check this out.
Away from politics, okay, gentlemen.
So here we are. So pay attention, okay? The video that I'm just going to play now, it says Senegal ignores the CAF verdict and moves the 2025 AFCON trophy to a military base. That is so gangster. I mean, they didn't need to do that. They just needed not to give it back. To moving it to a military base is like saying, okay, yeah, you want that? Come. Come, bring your tanks. Bring your tanks. You're not getting that damn trophy back. Let's have a quick watch of this little discussion, because I think this is hilarious.
Away from politics. Let's talk something different. Exactly. Now, fresh controversies are trailing the handling of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations final. In a new development, authorities in Senegal have moved the AFCON trophy to a guarded military base in Dakar amid ongoing disagreement with Morocco over the championship. The relocation follows a ruling by the Confederation of African Football, CAF, that overturned Senegal's on-field victory and awarded the title to Morocco. Senegal.
And I love that. The military surrounding that trophy. So what I do like about this is a lot of the time, African nations, particularly when they have weak leadership, can be very guilty of just folding to any kind of pressure from any kind of non-African entity. Just folding to the pressure and they're saying, oh, we want it now. Why do we have to give it back? We want to keep it. Why do you want to take it from us? They're like, you. You know what I mean? They're like, you ain't getting that damn trophy back. And everybody in Africa needs to have their back. Okay, I don't want. The problem with Africans is they always try and be more democratic than the democratic nations. They always want to be more diplomatic than the non-diplomatic enemies. They always want to come. It's always going to be another African who comes over and go, oh, don't cause trouble now. Yeah. They have done the ruling. The ruling has said you need to give it back. Give the trophy back now. Come on now, give the trophy back. Why are you causing this disturbance? That's the African approach. Okay, I'm not being funny, but it's weak and it's yellow-bellied. We don't need any of you African yellow bellies coming in with your weak, over diplomatic, over democratic crap, because no one's dealing with us like that. We need to be behind Senegal, yeah, in this action. We need to be saying the CAF, yeah, them, yeah, like piss off. You're not getting the trophy back. No one acknowledges it. And if you try and strip them, we are out of your tournament. We're not playing in it anymore. Because what's the point in African nations playing if they can just do this to us? Like, can you not see the logic here? It's very, very simple. If Senegal gets stripped, that means all of Africa was stripped of that trophy. Do you not understand that? It's very, very basic. We don't need the weak, yellow-bellied, easily supplanted Africans. Please, we haven't got time for you guys right now. Yeah? Be on code. It's not that difficult.
Bill's head coach, Pape Theo, is said to have been involved in transferring the trophy to the secured facility. Gentlemen, moving the trophy to a military base. What is Senegal doing? Is Senegal protecting their national symbol, or national victory, or whatever, or openly challenging CAF's authority?
I think.
What are they trying to do?
There are too many wrongs now coming into the whole thing. CAF, CAF was wrong in its judgment. If you look at the letters of Article 82 of CAF's the laws and all that, because let me state here, what it says is that any team that withdraws, listen, underline them, any team that withdraws, refuses to play or leave the pitch before the end of a match without the referee's authorization shall be deemed to have lost and be limited. Now, that said.
Now, I'm going to let him speak in a minute, because he's going to come on to the fact that the Senegalese left the pitch, which they did do, okay? They didn't leave it for very long. They came back on, they continued to play. But the important question that no one has probably asked the Senegalese, and no one's trying to engage with the Senegalese, is why they left the pitch. Why are black players, Africans, expected to put up with abuse when they play? Why are we expected to put up with racial abuse? Why are we expected to put up with a cheating referee? Why are we expected to put up with all of this nonsense and just get on with it? If you carry on playing while you're being racially abused, I'm afraid to say this to you, but you are a part of the problem. You are a part of the reason why it's normalized and why they expect to be able to racially abuse you. They expect to be able to cheat you and get away with it, because they want you to just get on with it regardless. There's no other field of life where an individual should be expected to put up with racial abuse whilst they're doing their job. The only way you get rid of this kind of racism is if you take a zero tolerance approach to it, which for a period of time during the late 90s, they were doing in football, and they were doing it quite effectively. But for some reason, they've U-turned on it now, and now racism's back to being totally normalized, and crowds, stadiums full of people chanting racist chants is just kind of like, well, just get on with it then. Black players being brought to tears. This is a normality in the sport. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. Like this we need to be walking out regularly, and where we see our players having to walk out, there needs to be none of this discussion that's happening here. And this is exactly the weakness that I'm talking about. There's wrongs on both sides now. There's wrongs on both sides. CAF was wrong, but Senegal was wrong to walk off the pitch, and now Senegal is wrong to take it to military. Just shut up. Shut the fuck up. No one, respectfully, brethren, yeah? This is this type of African shit that I get really, really bored of. As an African myself, yeah? You get too much of this. Stop trying to be like them, yeah? Stop trying to be like them with their fake diplomacy and their fake democracy, because they talk like this, but then they turn up to your nation with guns and bombs, yeah? You're talking like this, but you ain't got no power. So you ain't got time to try and be this stupid little middleman talking common sense. Like, black players are getting racially abused. They walked off the pitch. I'm standing on business. Yeah, they did the right thing, and they should do it again. And in fact, every black team should do exactly the same thing. And actually, when we win our match, we should all defend our trophies. We use the military to defend our trophies. That's it. That's it. I haven't got time for all of this shit. Honestly, respectfully. And those of you who aren't used to hearing me swear, this is a very, very touchy subject for me. This entire Senegal, Morocco, CAF thing has wound me up no end. I'm so angry. You do not understand. I'm angry at CAF, and I'm obviously livid at Morocco because I didn't know Morocco was that much of a dirt poor, disgusting, barbaric, dog-filled nation. I actually thought more of Moroccans than that. I've actually historically thought Moroccans were actually okay. And when I saw that, I'm like, fuck that nation. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with them right now. I ain't got time for that. I ain't got time for that. Entire nation, disgusting. But I'm more upset right now with the other African nations and their unwillingness to stand shoulder to shoulder with Senegal, which is what we need right now. We need to stand shoulder to shoulder with Senegal. That's it. You know, very frustrating. I'm not gonna lie. I want to see what this last video that I had lined up is before I move on to the next topic. What's this video? So I'm not gonna watch this one anymore. I've heard enough from these guys, respectfully. my limited patience is really
The Confederation of African Football dropped a bombshell, stripping Senegal of their title and then declaring Morocco as the new champions of the Africa Cup of Nations. I couldn't help it. I had to get to my legal advisor, Raymond Hegg. Ray, welcome to the show. How did we get here, Ray?
A little bit of a circus, unfortunately. You know, the appeal board have brought...
1 second. I want to see this guy's so CAF. So this guy's a CAF, a sport arbiter, a CAF and FIFA member. So let's hear what this guy has to say. Someone who's not African and maybe not as emotionally invested as I am. I want to hear what the neutral has to say on this topic before we move on, actually.
You know, the appeal board have brought in Article 82, which says that if a team leaves the field of play, then they deemed to have forfeited the game. But that's not what it is. You know, they can leave the field of play, but the referee is the only person who can determine that the game is finished. If the referee did not blow for the end of the game, which I understand he did not do, he allowed the team to come back onto the field of play. They then played 2 bits of extra time, 15 minutes each way, and only then did he blow the whistle for the end of the game. Now, there's no evidence that before the extra time went on, before the team came back, that Morocco had turned around to the referee and said, listen, we're playing this game under protest, because if they had done that, then maybe they would have had some leg to stand on. But the fact that they went back onto the field and the fact that the referee did not blow the game as being finished makes me wonder on what basis the appeal board even gave that ruling. Secondly, they say it was in terms of Article 84. Well, Article 84 is very clear. It says if a team contravenes the provisions of Article 82 and 83, it uses the word and. It doesn't use the word or. So there's a big difference in terms of the determination. Senegal certainly didn't contravene Article 83 in any way. So on what basis do they imply or do they use Article 84? Because it's clear. It says Article 82 and 83. And again, I say to you, you know, it doesn't say or. If it says or, it's different. But in the end, only the referee can call an end to the game. No administrator, no appeal board, no disciplinary board. No one else can do it but the referee. And the thing that surprises me more than anything is, you know, if you go back to 2019, in the Champions Cup, Wired, had a similar matter where CAF ruled that the decision of the referee is final. When he blows the whistle, it's final. Whether the appeal board took this into consideration, I don't know. But, you know, their decision has really thrown African football back into what I can only describe as a circus. And, you know, I feel sorry for CAF because of the fact that President Motsepe has tried very hard, as have the people at CAF, to keep the CAF image up there as one of the best footballing continents in the world. And when you get something like this coming up, people just laugh at you, and you know, they say you don't even know the rules of your own game.
So there you go. Africa, or CAF, has made Africa a laughing stock with this stupid ruling. And like someone just pointed out, when the when the South African, you know, is able to acknowledge that this is a joke, we know there's crazy levels of corruption, but this fuss should have been kicked up when the fines were issued. This is kind of my issue. No one thought it was a big deal when CAF turned around and fined Senegal twice what they fined Morocco, even though everyone saw the footage of Senegalese players fighting for their lives against a rabid crowd of dogs that were trying to unalive them because of a football match. Yeah. And who had been getting abused throughout, like this normality, this kind of attempt to project normalcy onto these wicked acts. And these, it's done, man. Like, we can't be tolerating this. We can't. This is it's only got to get there. They're only doing the next logical thing in step. The first thing that was done was they fined them twice, and the amount that they fined Morocco. And it's kind of like, oh, well, there was no comeback, no pushback for that. So let's do the next thing. Let's strip them of their trophy. If they'd got pushback from the fine, an African nation turned around and said, are you crazy? Forget fine. Can we ban Morocco for the next 2 tournaments? Because that's what should have happened. Morocco should be banned for the next 2 African Nations Cup for the way they conducted themselves in that final. They should be banned. Yeah? No African team or player should ever have to play Morocco. Not in the foreseeable future. They've ruined that prospect. And aren't they supposed to be hosting a World Cup coming up soon? Like this, what is going on? Sorry, I'm angry right now. I'm not gonna say, I'm very, very angry, man. But yeah, I mean, you heard it from the whole horse's mouth there. We could listen to more, but if you want to, video's called Explained How Senegal Will Respond to CAF's AFCON Decision, and it's available on a channel called Soccer Beat. Feel free to check that out on your own time. I want to move on from this topic now. But there you go, a little bit of a background for a topic that you can see gets me very, very hot beneath the collar. Okay, let's move on. So this one is actually going to be a very, very live reaction because I haven't watched this video I'm about to share with you guys, but I was like, I want to genuinely
sort of fixated
live
on this.
Respond to this, okay? Because it piqued my attention. The topic piqued my attention, but it's not just the topic, it's the people discussing the topic who piqued my attention as well. So the video is called You Can't Become English, Heated On-Air Race Clash Between Catherine Burble Singh. So this is an Asian woman. I need you to bear that in mind. That might become relevant. Okay. And Connor Tomlinson. Okay. What is it with these sons, these Insons, Robinson, Tomlinsons? He's clearly going to be our antagonist in this discussion. They might both end up being our antagonists, but let's have. But this piqued my attention because this is kind of like given a British perspective on the subject of race, which is an often kind of like, yeah, it's an often ignored topic when it comes to Britain because they're so effective at dog whistling when it comes to race in the UK. But I like people who speak from their chest because A, we can have a proper discussion with them, and B, you know, they're easy to refute if you need to refute them. But anyway, so this discussion is between this young lady, or this, I wouldn't say young, this lady, Catherine Burblesing and Connor Tomlinson. So this is going to be a live react. Let's check it out.
Whole ethnicity point. If you were to adopt a child, you and your wife were to adopt a baby from Nigeria, let's say, and you were to bring up the baby in your household and send your child to a school that was patriotic, there would be a love for England in your household. Are you telling me that child would not be brought up as a British child? Is that what you're?
Now, just to be clear here, this is why this piqued my attention. Okay. Notice how this is an Indian woman, debating a white man, and I know that this is just kind of like the pre-run where they put in the chops of good footage to grab everyone's attention. But notice in her little scenario that she drew up, she's made the child Nigerian. Now, I had 3 subscribers said, "Why Nigeria? Why not Asian?" Exactly. exactly the same thing I thought. That's why I was like, I'm gonna live respond to this, because that is such an Asian thing to do. Asians are so desperate to make out like the race debate is something that needs to be argued between white and black people, and they consider themselves, for some reason, some weird reason, as not a part of the race problem or the immigration problem. The immigration problem doesn't include them. So you have to understand that kind of the way she's framed that question is symptomatic of senior Asian politicians right now who are talking exactly like that. Okay, we've got a woman called Suella Braverman. Before that, there was a woman called Preeti Patel. These women, these Asian women, are obsessed with creating and not even fabricating, but actually amplifying and exaggerating this racial divide between whites and blacks. When in reality, if you come to the UK, black people aren't really the #1 concern when they talk about immigration. They really normally are talking about different groups from different parts of Asia when it comes to immigration, when it comes to people taking jobs and stuff, but they want to distract the argument, and they're desperate to make it about black people. That's why she's like, "Oh, if you had a child and you're from Nigeria, why don't you say from Bangladesh? Why couldn't the child be from Bangladesh? Why couldn't the child be from Mumbai? If you had a child and you're from Mumbai, why don't you say that? Why did it have to be Nigerian?" But Miss Burbing Sal, do you think that he's talking to you like a peer right now? Do you think you typical Asian? But anyway, let's carry on and have a watch.
You're saying
They would possess a British passport.
so. Hang on,
using your school as no.
That child.
And to be clear, Burbing Sal, we don't need you advocating for us. And actually, let me be very clear. I don't want, as a black person, Asians advocating for us, because you don't do a very good job. And actually, the #1 perpetrators of anti-black racism in the UK are the Asian community by a long shot, by a country mile. You are far more likely to be hired by a white person in the UK than an Asian person. It's not even close. I promise you that it's not even close. If you're black and you go into an interview, you can be the most qualified person in the world. If the person interviewing you is Asian, I almost guarantee you're not going to get that job. So Miss Burbing Sal here acting like she needs to advocate. We don't want you advocating for us, Burbing Sal. Advocate for your community. Discuss your community with him, not ours, please.
Because that child is black, would not be.
No, it's because that child is Nigerian. It's not because they're black.
But it's
That's
your
not the same
child.
thing.
You've brought up that child.
Yes, but that doesn't mean they suddenly become English. You cannot become English no more than a man who puts on a dress can become a woman.
I don't believe skin color or ethnicity carries culture. I think culture is created in the environment in which you are brought up in.
By who?
By everybody. You guys know that there are so many white people in England who think very differently to you. In fact, the vast majority of them think differently to you. And so you need to ask yourselves, well, why is that the case?
The whole point of the independent media is to deliver unfiltered conversations and analysis that you simply will not get from the crooked, corrupt, and censored MSM. And today is the perfect illustration of that. We are hosting the controversial conversation that The Spectator didn't want you to see. Indeed, they have gone to great lengths to hide the footage of a debate hosted by its editor, Michael Gove, and our two guests in the studio, Britain's strictest headmistress from the famous Michaela School, Catherine Birbalsingh, and host of Tomlinson Talks on YouTube and Substack, Connor Tomlinson. After filming the debate,
Michael Gove, by the way, is a real piece of shit. He was the, I think, the Home Secretary for, I want to say, the Conservative? Yeah, I want to say David Cameron's Conservative government. And he made loads of sweeping reforms that really had a bad impact on the UK education system. He's a big reason why the kids do, I think, SATs. I think he was the one that introduced that there. So now you got to train your kind of like 11 plus exams. That was kind of one of his little babies. He also made teaching incredibly bureaucratic, and Ofsted took a nosedive under his leadership. I remember all this because during that time I was still a qualified teacher. Well, I'm still a qualified teacher, but I was teaching actively then in schools. So he was a big deal. But yeah, let's carry on.
On immigration, integration, and British identity in September last year, and promising, Connor, that it would be released uncensored, The Spectator's bosses reviewed the final footage and decided it would never be released at all. Well, you know, there's no censorship here at Outspoken, no spin and no bias either. So that is why today we are giving Catherine and Connor total freedom to have that very important conversation. So, will integration succeed?
And that's just the dog whistling as well in the UK. I have a feeling the reason that interview didn't air is because of that very thing. It's like they're so careful about which conversations they allow to get public, publicity, and which ones they don't allow to get publicity. The whole thing around immigration, which I've talked about ad nauseum on this channel, so those of you who watch my other videos are probably getting bored of it, is that immigration is the biggest deception, fugazi, that they put out on the general public. Everyone in the general public has been fed this stupid narrative that immigration is the result of imperialism and countries in the West paying their debt to society. That's the view that they put on. Everyone thinks that immigration, all immigrants are refugees, first of all, which is false. Okay, majority of immigrants aren't refugees. Okay, a majority of immigrants are there by choice, but without any kind of aren't there under any duress. Okay, it's normally beneficial to the person sponsoring that immigration that immigrant makes it there. Secondly, even refugees and lower level unskilled immigrants are all a part of a growing capitalist economy. In growing capitalist economies, the need for a steady stream of immigrants into your population is vital to holding the minimum wage down and to making workforces employable and for supporting small businesses. It is literally vital. It is the lifeblood. Otherwise, what happens is you get massive levels of inflation when it comes to wages and a rise in minimum wage as your general population becomes more and more skilled as time goes on. Without that level of immigrants, you don't have those low level jobs because no one's there to take them. So these are the lies they don't tell you. But anyway, that's the whole another discussion. Let's get on with this.
British historian Robert Toms seems to think so, as at a conference on how to save England last year, he said that the solution to immigration, integration, and sectarian voting was to, quote, clone Catherine Birbalsingh, because if you've been to her Michaela School and have seen little girls with headscarves on reciting Kipling and singing the national anthem, you think that becoming English is possible if you want to do it.
That's so pathetic as well. Respectfully, that is so pathetic. Acting like this woman who's assimilating migrants as though they don't get that in every school, as if there's this resistance for Muslim kids, or African kids to embrace British culture. Any immigrant any immigrant from any part of the world wants their kids to speak good English and become good British citizens, because they know that down the line it's financially beneficial for that to be the case. As someone who has taught across the UK, but not only that, has experienced schooling in the UK and in London, the most multicultural place in the UK and possibly in the world, to be totally honest with you, there's never been this issue of immigrant kids not wanting to embrace British culture. This is a falseness, it's a falsehood. It's completely made up. It's an entire fabrication. It's not an issue. This is the things that they want people arguing about, these non-existent situations where, you know, you have to go to a special school to make the kids want to really be English. Like, oh, for flip's sake, like this is the stupidity that you're surrounded with and the lies that you're surrounded with when you live in the UK. None of this is real. None of this is real.
And if you're encouraged to do it, and if you're required to do it,
and respectfully, only idiots like this guy and his guest, they're the only ones who believe in this crap. Oh, you know, without good schooling, what will happen is the kids will come here and then they'll just join a terrorist organization. Like, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen, for God's sake, man.
But one person who disagrees with that philosophy is Connor Tomlinson, who wrote an article after the conference insisting that you can't make...
Connor doesn't look too bright, does he? Let's be honest.
...make someone British, and you can't learn an identity. He says this integration myth must end. Catherine then began to weigh in on the conversation on X, leading to this invitation for her and Connor to participate in the discussion moderated by Gove on the issue of multiculturalism and integration. Both parties said they enjoyed the conversation, and it was conducted with respect, we are told. But I think these few months on, it's even more important that the conversation censored and covered up by the Spectator is now seen by you. So thank you both for being here to recreate.
Thank God he started, because dude was talking way too much. I was about to hit fast forward.
That discussion, but of course it will be much more sound because Michael Gove is substituted with me today, right, which we both love. So Connor, I'll start with you. Why don't you think integration can succeed, and why do you take umbrage with the almost
Verbal Singh's really trying to rock the afro, isn't she? She's really trying to lean into this I can speak for black people. Let's see. She's got some winning back to do now, because I've seen that kind of pre-roll and I'm already irritated. I already don't like her. So I hope that she imprints positively on me as this goes on.
universally revered work of Catherine at the Michaela School. We are on a mission to 700.
Nah, man, you're talking way too much. Let's go. Taking the Michael. Okay.
You turn on the bell, you'll get alerted to all our new videos.
Well, thank you very much for hosting us both, Dan. I must say I enjoy it.
Is it like deja vu?
And that's such a typical prospectus image that you'll get on any London school. Yeah. Oh, look at me, surrounded by brown and black children. Hooty.
Again, significantly more sound than the Unheard Studios. So I wanted to say first of all, and I said this in the previous discussion we had, that
yes, but we didn't get to hear that, so you're going to have to repeat yourself.
I do not take any umbrage with the exam results and the like that Catherine has been able to achieve, especially considering the disastrous education system that is only getting worse under Bridget Phillipson. So the debate itself is, or discussion or disagreement, is not necessarily about a philosophy of the education system. My contentions were threefold, and I think it's taken on renewed importance since we had our first discussion, because not only, as Kemi Badenoch said at ARC, that Catherine's work is her model for the muscular liberalism she would like to see become the driving philosophy of her Conservative Party, but because Suella Braverman, who
Suella Braverman, who I mentioned earlier, is the Asian, I think she's a Home Secretary. I think she might be shadow now. But anyway, she's a witch, an absolute witch. Absolute witch. Like the parliament's full of these basically Nazi-like Asian women. really, really vilely anti-black. So, you know, there you go. Shout out Dregger for the $2 for the algorithm. I appreciate the donation.
She mentioned in her speech, as Reform's new education spokesperson said, the Michaela School is her model for what she would like to see throughout education. And so it's pertinent, per that quote that you read out at the start, that political parties across Britain are looking to the Michaela School as a model, not just for education, but hopefully for their education, assimilation and cultural cohesion strategy. And so my concern...
And just to pipe in really quickly, on the UK education system, it is failing, to be clear. He didn't qualify as to how he's judged failing, but I'll qualify how I judge failing. One of the biggest problems we have in the UK education system is that black children enter primary school, and it's still the case, at the top of the class. They enter primary school with a higher reading level, higher maths attainment than, quite a bit higher than the average, and at the top. Okay, so black children enter primary school at the top of the class. By the time they conclude primary school, they're on average at the bottom of the class. Now, in the UK, everyone's aware of this statistic, and it's presented as not a problem or a failure of the education system, but instead it's presented as a problem with the black community. Does that ring true, by the way, for any black Americans here? Okay, the same tactics being used here. So black parents, we're sending our kids to school in the form or in the manner that we should be sending them to school, top of the class, okay? And the school is systematically failing them to such a high degree that by the time they leave primary school, they're at the bottom of the class and their confidence is through the floor. Now, I can tell you right now, and I'll tell you unequivocally, without any shadow of a doubt, that happens because a lot of teachers are racist, particularly Asian ones, by the way. If you on my live stream right now, if you're playing this back and your child has an Asian teacher, you better be on top of that, because Asians are right at the top when it comes to anti-black racism. I've had to move my daughter's school twice because of the Asian teachers who wouldn't acknowledge their racism, wouldn't change their way, and would try their best to break my child's confidence, and I wouldn't allow it. I absolutely wouldn't allow it. So I moved them to a private school, and then I had to move them from a private school to a grammar school because of Asian racism, by the way. Strangely enough, I never had this problem with white teachers. Every time they had white teachers, they flourished. But my point being is that you're not only going to get this from Asian teachers, you get it from white teachers, but the bottom line is the entire education system is geared up to make black children fail. And yet there's been no effort, no inquest, no investment to see where they're failing black kids. It's just put on the black community. So like, what the heck? You're loco parentis. We're sending our kids to you. You've got one job to do, and that is, if they're at the top of the class, maintain that until they leave primary school. They should be leaving the top of the class. They shouldn't be cascading to the bottom. This is absolutely a failure in the system. So yes, I do think the UK education system's a pile of crap, but as a black parent, let me tell you right now, you do not have the luxury to send your kids to school and then to just go to your job and to not be an active, involved parent. I am active and involved. I have been with all of my kids, and as a result, they've done well. But if I wasn't, they wouldn't have. I'm quite certain of that. So I'm just putting that warning out there to you guys.
Ones were threefold. First, that the version of British identity that is put forward as being practiced desirably at Catherine's school is indistinguishable from liberal pluralism, which allows other identities and other faiths to proliferate underneath it like an umbrella. The second thing I said was, I am not confident it's going to work. For the precise reason, as Robert Toome said, if girls are reading Kipling and singing God Save the King, but they're still doing it in Muslim garb, that means that they have inherited a comprehensive worldview, Islam, from their parents, but you can substitute it in with plenty of other religions as well. And they may well be participating in the culture that I have inherited as an Englishman, but we don't know in which way they're going to do it. And we don't know if that is going to have a stronger hold on the way they see the world than their inherited culture, their inherited faith, their inherited family dynamics. And the final concern I had was,
What a stupid argument, respectfully. This guy is really like not very bright. Okay, so the argument he's just made there is that someone can go through a schooling system and they can, you know, participate in all of the kind of outward displays of being fully ingrained into the culture. But if they do it wearing a hijab, then it shows that they have essentially got, you know, they've got divided interests, because this religion means that they could be more committed to that religion than they are to the nation. Well, then if you, and he said, oh, well, a lot of other religions, it could be the case as well. But notice how he doesn't specifically mention Christianity. Now, Christianity doesn't have an outward garb, okay? It doesn't have an outward garb. It just, you're a Christian. So is it the presence of the clothing that is your issue? How about Hindus? They don't really have an outward garb. They might put a dot on their forehead or maybe some Mendi patterns on their hand. But by and large, you wouldn't even know that someone is a Hindu unless they tell you. Same with a Sikh, unless they've grown their hair, for instance. Yeah. So a lot of these things you won't even know people are practicing. And yet he's using that to say that, well, it shows that they have, you know, parted interests. So what are you trying to ban? Are you trying to say that someone can't practice a religion and be patriotic and be a, you know, someone who fully loves their nation? Do you see how stupid this argument is? This is not a guy who, I don't think he's even put any thought into it. But anyway, let me see what the response is.
If it does work, then it generates a brand new governing class with an excellent education as provided by Catherine. That means that you then have a new generation of politicians of immigrant heritage who will then govern over an increasingly fractured society where we are approaching a state of being a minority. And we've already had that in Rishi Sunak and Priti Patel and Kemi Badenoch. And all of these people, Rishi Sunak included, has been upheld as an immigrant success story. Yet, what did he do when he was in government? He opened the doors to India. And so it shows that there are still these ethnic and cultural and religious loyalties that persist despite a good education, despite going through all of Britain's institutions and assimilating.
So what about when the doors were open to the EU? Did you have an issue with that? Because that was done when you probably had about 2 or 3 black faces in the whole of the Houses of Parliament. Okay, when we joined the EU, and that opened floodgates of Polish immigration was insane. And if people knew the deal that the UK had with Poland, they'd understand why so many Polish immigrants came here, because Polish immigrants didn't pay tax. They did pay tax, but the tax they could claim back upon leaving to go back to Poland. They had made a deal with the Polish government that a lot of people weren't aware of. So the Polish came here in droves, and as a result, they are massive, you know, business, and they have massive business and land ownership all across London as a result of the very favorable deal that they were given, which essentially allowed them to build themselves up in class. And now most Polish are pretty much middle class. They entered as working class, and they are managed in a single generation to build themselves up to a middle class population because of the favorable tax deal. Now that tax deal was done with an all white parliament, okay, with a white foreign secretary and a white home secretary. So him making this argument, okay, I don't like Priti Patel, I don't like Suella Braverman, I don't like, you know, Kemi Badenoch, and I certainly don't like who's the other one? I can't remember. Rishi Sunak. I don't like any of them. Okay, they're all evil, they're all wicked, and they're all useless. But the point being, his entire racial argument makes no sense. Okay, all of these governments are just doing what they've already done. It's nothing to do with race. And obviously, when come to the UK as well, the biggest problem we have in the UK is European immigration. Okay, if you want to look at the rates of crimes that are committed, they're done by the EU migrants. There was a massive problem with Eastern European migrants and RAPE in the UK, particularly in London. It was through the roof. They were literally just coming here and just literally it was never ever given any attention. It was never reported on, and it was just literally overlooked because these people doing it were white migrants. White immigrants committing crimes they never want to shine a light on. In fact, just go back a few years, about 3 or 4 years, there was a massive trend of EU migrants, mainly from Poland, Bulgaria, and Romania, basically jacking people's cars up in front of their houses, sometimes in the driveway, and then with a grinder cutting out their catalytic converter and just driving away with it. And before you say that sounds far-fetched, it happened to my next door neighbor. It happened to my next door neighbor, and they're in their 60s. Her husband, she came out and she was like, "What are you doing?" They chased her into a house with a crowbar. Her husband came out and they tried to attack him. She called the police. Here's a nice little statistic for you guys. The police haven't come to this day. So that crime wasn't even reported because she called the police and the police never came. And they had a Range Rover. It was a Range Rover. They jacked the Range Rover up. They took the catalytic converter out, and they just had to pay for it. It's never been filed as a crime because the police didn't even bother showing up. Now, bear in mind, one of the reasons the police didn't show up is because when she called up, she said, "Oh, there's a group of Eastern Europeans." If she had said "I see freeze," she said, "Oh, there's a group of black boys and they look like they're robbing someone," I guarantee you 6 police cars would have turned up. But because it was some Eastern Europeans taking the catalytic converter out of a car and they chased into her, "Oh, did they hit you?" "No, they didn't hit me." "Okay, we'll just stay in your house. It's much safer there." That's all the police managed to say to her. Nothing, not even a crime report. So it doesn't even get filed as a statistic. This is, anyway.
Ultimately, I'm quite pessimistic.
Catherine, why is he wrong?
Okay, well, I've written down here just what my original problem with Connor was. I've just quoted you here from what you wrote about us. Which
I'm surprised it could fit on one sheet of A4, to be fair.
Yes,
people normally have more problems.
Well, no. Well, you said quite a lot in the 2 videos that you made on us, and then also in your Substack. You said what Birbal Singh and the Michaela School model represent is a replacement of Britain's traditional high-trust, homogenous, self-governing, spontaneous order with an authoritarian headmistress state to make new tribal minorities and the besieged host majority play nice. So that, I suppose, sums up sort of what you just said?
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't think you really know schools. I think that why...
That's a fact. He doesn't know anything about education, just to be clear. Doesn't know a thing.
While you sort of say, yes, it's great that you've got these GCSE results.
And just to also jump on what Smelly said there, in the UK, you have to understand the demographics, The UK white population is like, it's humongous. I think white people make up about 90% of the population. 89 to 90% of the population in the UK are white. Most of the immigrants are concentrated in the major cities, London, Birmingham, Liverpool. So we have a few major cities and ports where you get a load of the immigrant populations, but most of the rest of England, rural England, is almost entirely white. You'll struggle to see any faces of color, so to speak. The black population, I think we make up about 3% of the UK population. So we're a tiny, I think Asians make up about 4%, if I remember correctly. 4 or 5, and then they got a few kind of like European migrants here, there. But about 80, I think it's about 89% or something like that, the UK white population. So the fear, there's no fear. There should be no fear of replacement to anyone who's got, room temperature IQ. Everyone, it shouldn't even be a talking point. But don't blame them too much. You have to understand how effectively racist the UK media is. The UK media is the most effective dog whistling, underhanded communication falsification machine there is out there. If you think, the good thing about the American one is, channels like Fox, CNN, they wear their liberal and or right-wing politics on their sleeves. It's just like really obvious what they're doing. In the UK, they're so slick and so able. So you got channels like, Sky News, the BBC, they're all the same. Channel 4 News, whatever it is. And they all are very, very good at making the entire population believe they're getting a unbiased perspective. And in reality, they're getting the most racist, most uninformed, biased views that you could think imaginable. I promise you. Dregger says, when I was there, they blamed everything on Romas. Yeah. Well, when were you there? You got to let me know where were you? I'll be interested to hear a bit more about that.
Results. There's a reason why we've got the GCSE results that we've got and why other schools are faring so poorly. And I think this includes schools that are mainly white, schools that have lots of ethnic minorities. Kids are kids. And it doesn't matter what color they are and what religion they are and so on. They need structure and they need order. And
that's a fact as well. He's never taught, and I've taught in, well, every school I've taught in has been multicultural, multi-faith, multiracial, in every sense of the word. And kids are just kids. That's the bottom line. There's no running trend I can give you across an ethnic group like you'd find, or they try to purport in, places like America, for instance, who are, dead set on pinning certain characteristics on certain ethnic groups. I can tell you right now, Muslims have as many dumb kids as bright kids, have as many pleasant kids as unpleasant kids. Black people have as many dumb kids as bright kids, as pleasant as unpleasant. White population has as many dumb kids as bright kids, as pleasant as unpleasant. Kids are just kids, okay? They're just kids. And I can tell you also that when they're at high school in age, they're not at the age where many of them have embraced any view enough for it to become their personality. Racism is a very, very taught characteristic. It's a very, very taught characteristic. And the scary thing is there are teachers out there who are, the amount of times I've had to check teachers who are fostering an environment that allows for racism. One of the places I had to check it very heavily when I used to teach in the Middle East. I was a head of moderation out in a school in Qatar, which I've probably mentioned before. And I had to check many, many teachers on their unwillingness to challenge racism, and often encouraging it as well. Because when you take a lot of these teachers outside of the confines of the UK, where there's maybe regulation, when you put them in this unregulated environment, you'd be surprised how colonial they get. It was shocking.
I think you are unwittingly actually just very progressive and very much on the left in the way in which you describe what children need. The idea that children shouldn't require order, and that you've got this idea that there's this spontaneous order that happens. If you put two toddlers in a room with a toy, when there's only one toy, it doesn't matter if the toddlers are black or white, they will hit each other in order to get the toy. And we as adults, our school is very similar in terms of its approach to the parish schools of the 1800s. And this idea that I'm authoritarian rather than being in authority, the distinction is often misunderstood by those on the left, that they think that I'm this authoritarian. And actually what you're saying resembles precisely what the leftists are always accusing me of.
By the way, head teachers that aren't authoritarian are useless. I'll be totally honest with you. Yeah, the only way a school works is if you have a very clear delineation between the students and the teachers need to be able to lead the school with authority. That's the bottom line. You can't place these kids in a situation of loco parentis, that is the teachers acting as parent and guardian, but then remove all of their ability to instill some kind of boundaries and discipline, because many kids can't operate without this. For many kids, school is the only place they go to where they have boundaries. When they go home, no boundaries exist. So calling a head teacher an authoritarian is a compliment.
And as you know, the leftists will accuse me. They'll say, how dare I even come and speak to you? And they attack me for that. And despite me disagreeing with you, I'm going to come and talk to you because I don't agree with the left in refusing to talk to people. I think it's really important that we keep channels of communication open so that we can find where we disagree. And what I'm hoping to do today is to try and persuade you that children need order and structure, and that they used to have it in this country. And that nowadays, let me just give you a few stats. In particular, stats in Scotland might be of interest to you, because Scotland, of course, is 93% white. And so if you're going to say, well, actually, this is the problem with ethnics being in the country. Well, in Scotland, 1 in 4 of the violent incidents that are reported to the police happen between child and teacher, right? 1 in 4, it's a child attacking their teacher. 1 in 3 kids in Scotland leave primary school not having achieved the basics in maths or English. Across the UK, you need 20% to pass your maths GCSE. 1 in 3 kids don't manage that. You need about 20% to pass your science GCSE. 1 in 3 kids don't manage to reach that. So I'd say there's something bigger.
And I'd also concur. I've taught in a working class white area, and this is one of the things. And once again, it's partly his fault, but it's largely a fault of the UK media, because the UK media likes to paint this picture as though these statistics don't exist. They like to paint the picture as though everything all white is a success and everything multicultural is failing. That's coming from the media. Yes, it's parroted by the politicians, but the media is deliberately putting out this falsehood. I used to teach in a very white working class area. In fact, the school that I taught in, when I arrived there, they hadn't sent a kid to university for 8 years. So for 8 years, not a single child who progressed out of that school had managed to find their way into university. This is a pretty much all white school, given, you know, a little sprinkling of a, you know, ethnic minority here or there. Okay. In the UK, you have to understand that would shock a lot of the UK population if I told them that, because they believe all these white schools do really well. But she's showing you, like Scotland, for instance, which is almost entirely white, has, you know, 1 in 3, 1/3 of the students can't pass maths or, you know, maths or science at a 20%, you know, 20% pass, you know, 20% passing grade boundary. That's, you know, it shows that those schools are failing. But white failure is ignored so that people can have ridiculous arguments about immigration and have ridiculous views about ethnic minorities like this fella here.
You're going on here. That you're sort of fixated on this whole ethnicity point, when in fact, we need to look at our schools and what our schools are doing. You know, you name all of these politicians who are brown or black, but what about the white politicians? And why are you not questioning why all of these politicians, whatever color they are, react as they do, perhaps, and actually not the ones you've mentioned. I think those ones are very pro-patriotism.
For India.
But no, for this country, Michaela is a reaction not to...
He can't see past color because he's just claimed that Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, Rishi Sunak and Kemi Badenoch, because of their color, aren't patriotic. These are 3 of the biggest ethnic coons in the existence of British parliamentary history. In fact, they probably occupy positions 1, 2, 3, and 4 in regards to their level of anti-ethnic, anti-ethnic drive. They passionately want to show themselves as being against ethnic minorities and for the white majority with everything that they do. And he's turned around and be like, oh, for India, not for us. That's just, he's just a alt-right racist. Like, he can try and dress it up in this poor impression of a well-spoken Englishman, but the bottom line is this is just your usual low education, not critically minded, for alt-right Tommy Robinson, BNP member. That's what this guy is. He's not thinking.
To ethnicity or multiculturalism, Michaela is a reaction to the failure of patriotism and the failure of culture in this country. And we are reestablishing an old-fashioned traditional culture that ought to be in all of our schools. Let me give you another stat. In 2008, 75% of teachers said that they have a duty to teach children that we should be ashamed of this country. That's 75% of teachers in 2008. In 2004...
To be clear, the way she's reported that sounds like a total bunch of bullshit. Because why would 78% of teachers say, we need to teach that we should be ashamed? Let's be specific. They're probably talking, the question was probably linked to the British Empire, I'd imagine, because the only thing that 78% of any population in the UK would ever turn around and say we should be careful about the way that we present this. So the question was probably something in the lines of, in terms of the British Empire, should we be teaching it in a way that shows regret, something along those lines, which makes sense. We shouldn't be celebrating the British Empire. There's nothing to celebrate about the British, about going around the world, unaliving, genociding, colonizing, taking over people's resources, removing their native rulers, removing their native rule of law, destroying their systems, their languages, their architecture, stealing their architecture, all of the above. We shouldn't be celebrating that. It's a shameful part of British history. And yet she's just framed it as, oh, 78% of people, said that we should be ashamed. We should be teaching shame for Britons. Like, this is why I can't stand people like her, sitting here and pretending that they're representing, the ethnic minority in this argument. These people are two sides of the same coin. She's a hypocrite.
80% of children of young people felt that they could be proud of the country. 20 years later, in 2024, that number has been reduced to 40%. So we went from 80% to 40%. That's no wonder when 3/4 of the teaching population is trying to teach the children.
Perhaps the falling in how much people are proud of the nation. Because first of all, stop acting like young people are too stupid to observe what's taking place in the world. You've pulled out 3 separate stats there and then tried to act as though the correlation equals causation in this case. Well, back in this year, 78% of teachers said you should be ashamed of the UK, which is probably not what they said. Like I said, it was probably to do with the British Empire, but that's an aside. And what's happened is since 2008 to present, or she said 2024, children are leaving school and now they're a lot more ashamed or a lot more negative about the UK than they were in 2008. So why don't you ask yourself the question, what's happened between those years to change people's perspectives? Could it be something to do with the numerous wars that have taken place? Could it be something to do with the overt and outright anti-Islamic nature of the media, the press, and the nation's foreign policies? Could it be something to do with the deportation policies? Could it be something to do with the way immigrants are being treated? Could it be something to do with Brexit? You have all of these contributing factors to which most, not just children, but UK adults would say, I'm not proud of this nation. This nation is a shithole, thanks to this shitty parliament and shitty government for the past how many hundreds of, for the past how many decades. Since New Labour, this country has been run to the ground by these demons who all they know how to do is start new wars. All they know how to do is strip any of the things that made this nation great, like the NHS and the free education system, all being turned on their heads. Everyone's suffering in terms of their cost of living. And that's why people hate this nation. But you're going to boil it down to, oh, well, it's the teachers, because they said they weren't teaching us. You should be proud of this nation. You can teach that in your Michaela school as much as you like. But I guarantee you, if you was to ask those kids, even in that school, are they proud of what this nation has done? Many of them would say no, because they're going home and they're seeing, British troops in places they shouldn't be, or they're seeing people, food bank queues of people waiting to be given food in food banks all across the UK. These are things that never existed a decade ago. Like, engage brain. These people are arguing on a incredibly simplistic, binary, and myopic perspective. It's ridiculous.
Children to be ashamed of their country. Those teachers are not brown and black. Those teachers are white.
But first, quick gut check for the new year. Data leaks aren't of records trick by and so send removal record confirmation your account on your behalf. Fine. Details anywhere, link interest. It won't find you cash out self.
It's a long ad.
So what you should be asking yourself is, what is going on in our schools? Why is the country in such a position where it sort of hates itself? Because that's really important when it
perhaps the country should hate itself. Did that ever cross your mind? Perhaps it's healthy that the country's population has a problem with this country's foreign policies and this country's domestic policies and this country's treatment of immigrants and this country's outright racism and these countries' royal family who racially dog whistle, and this country who are willing to pull us out of the EU for the sake of corruption and corrupt governments and lies and not fulfilling promises. These are all things. The country's dislike for itself is a reflection of its dislike for the government. That's very, very simple, unless you're wanting to present it as though everything in the nation is a result to how kids are being taught in school, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Comes to cohesion and everyone being able to get on with each other. And I just don't think you look at these points and consider them, really.
Well, you haven't read my other work, or for example, I gave a
Who's gonna read your work? Respectfully, Connor, ain't no one wasting their time reading your work, mate.
Speech at the Family Education Trust after you, but you weren't there, and I did actually cover those sorts of points. So I don't disagree. The reason I think it's farcical to say I am on the left is because I do not buy into the anthropology that liberalism shares with the same Marxists that have populated teaching unions and are out there marching.
I don't mean the liberals. I mean the leftist identitarians. That's who you
they're
have
the
lots in
same.
common
They're
with.
the same group.
No, they're not.
No, hang on, because the fundamental premise of liberals and Marxists is that they all start from the original position of we are all the same.
Okay, so the anthropology is complete misuse of that term, but anyway, we'll carry on.
That there is one governing philosophy, one way of life, which is suitable for all human beings. And so if we just level all differences between all human beings and deny all differences between all human beings, then we'll all live in John Lennon's Imagine. And the communists have a much more violent way of doing this, which we both oppose. But the liberals believe that if you construct a society from schools to the state in such a way that everyone has a shared pluralistic identity, that you base this identity on things like tolerance and free speech and the rule of law and playing cricket and other sorts of things that the Department of Education cooked up under our mutual friend Mr. Gove, then everyone can live alongside each other and sing Kumbaya. And so when I used the word authoritarian there in the quote that you read out, I didn't mean that authority is wrong. I'm a big believer in hierarchy. I mean, it would be a bit weird if, as a Catholic, I wasn't. What I was saying was...
So he just said he's a Catholic, which is incredibly ironic, okay? Because England is not a Catholic nation. It's a Protestant nation, okay? It's a Protestant nation. It's not a Catholic nation. And he made the argument earlier about the fact that, religion essentially causes a split in one's commitment, so to speak, a split in one's allegiance, limits the ability for someone to be fully patriotic. And he used the hijab as his argument as to why someone who wears a hijab could never be fully accepted because they have an allegiance to their religion. And then he comes out here and he's not even Church of England. Yeah, Church of England. He's a Catholic, which the Church of England historically tried to remove or successfully removed and replaced with their own church. So he's got effectively a foreign religion. He's practicing a foreign religion, which contradicts his own point.
A culture is enforced at Michaela, which has then been used as a prescription for the culture writ large to solve our problems of multicultural ethnic tensions. And that is a British identity that you rationally sign up to by singing the national anthem, learning a curriculum, and importantly, as I wrote in my piece and I said in my video.
And to be clear, I will never sing the national anthem. Never. Never have, never will.
Which you didn't quote, but that's fine. That's premised on making certain compromises that you said at ARC in 2023 need to be made in order to, quote, make multiculturalism work. And that includes enforcing the children to not eat any meat in case it offends Muslims or in case it offends Hindus, Sikh dietary requirements. It means that you had a lengthy lawsuit for which, again, you had my sympathies and you were you were on the right side of that, don't get me wrong, because Muslim students organically started praying in the playground. And so rather than saying Islam isn't welcome in our school, he said all religions aren't welcome in our school. Now, when Kimmy Badenoch says this is the muscular liberalism I would like to base the country on, no. We're a country.
I don't know about what Kemi says. I wouldn't call us a muscular liberalism. I'd call us that we're British, which is a very different thing from liberalism.
So she just essentially is bowing down to the pressure. She's like a Kemi Badenoch, bowing down to this pressure. You know, she says no religions, but really it's more the overt practicing of religion that they have a problem with, and normally Islamic. Because I'm sure if a group of Catholics held hands and prayed in the canteen together, we wouldn't have seen her make any kind of reaction or act out against any kind of religion. So this is just kind of like, seriously, man, boring.
But Britain. Sorry, Dan, I don't want to interrupt.
If you were to adopt a child, you and your wife were to adopt a baby from Nigeria, let's say.
And this is what ground my gears at the start. Once again, the picking of Nigeria, the picking of a black child. This is her. You could have made this point equally as effectively, even more effectively, if you just said a child who looked like me, who was Indian. Yeah, she didn't say that. She deliberately picked a black child because she doesn't want to. She wants to make it like I said, they like to fabricate this false white versus black divide in the UK, which has never been an issue. And by the way, when I say they, I mean people like her. I think it was Suella Braverman, who was trying to use people deported back to Rwanda. The UK has never had a problem with Rwandan migrants ever, like never, apart from after Suella Braverman's little thing, and then suddenly you had this random attack of a Rwandan boy who attacked these 3 girls, which I think was a total false flag. I'm not going to go into that right now, but it's nonsense, because you just never hear of Rwandans causing trouble in the UK ever. This is the kind of shit that you have to put up with in this country. Do you know what I mean? So it's people like her. Yeah, she's pissing me off. I don't like her.
And you were to bring up the baby in your household and send your child to a school that was patriotic and did teach all the sorts of things that we do at Michaela. And you and your wife were to be the way you are with your child. And
also, by the way, all those Asian people that I mentioned before, and Kemi Badenoch, they're all with white partners as well. So this is a part of her national strategy, so to speak, to marry into whiteness. You know, it's kind of like seen as the very epitome of Asian culture, to marry into whiteness, and to produce these kind of like, oh, what you got? We're basically white. You know, if we had a child, the child would be white. You know, that's kind of where that's why she's positioned this very specifically with a Nigerian child and not with an Asian child.
And talk about the history of the country, the culture of the country. You would eat, I don't know, breakfast with baked beans, and you would watch Mr. Bean, and you would read Wordsworth and Shakespeare, and you would go for drives in the rolling hills, and there would be a love for England in your household. Are you telling me that child would not be brought up as a British child? Is that what you were saying?
No, they would be brought up as a British child,
and they would not be British.
But is that what
you're saying?
They would possess a British passport. They would be administratively British, but that does not mean that they are indistinguishable from people who have English, Scottish, Welsh, and Irish heritage, which is what Robert Toombs had said.
So hang on.
So this is the issue here, and you get a lot of this deliberate straw manning, because you notice how he brought up English, Scottish, Welsh, and Irish ancestry, Northern Irish, obviously. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that one. But the point being that he brought that up because what he didn't want to deal with is the term British, because everyone agrees that Britain is an empire. And everyone agrees that in that scenario that she's just painted, that child would qualify to be British, just like I qualify to be British with my British passport. I was born here as a Brit, but I would never call myself an Englishman. Okay, I would never call myself a Scotsman. I would never call myself Welsh, because I think everyone with half a brain is able to identify the difference between ethnic groups is what English is. If you say you're English, you are identifying with an ethnic group, an ethnicity. I am English, I am Scottish, I am Irish, I am Welsh. Those are ethnicities. Yet British is not an ethnicity. Yeah, Britain is an empire. Britain is a false nation state conquering label, imperialist colony, whatever you want to call it. But it's like the Roman Empire. People would call themselves Roman. Okay, you didn't have to be from Rome to be Roman. Roman was something that people could, qualify, could be born into, could be annexed into, and they would become Romans. Okay, it wouldn't suddenly make them Italian, for want of a better word. So this is where he's deliberately, well, actually probably not deliberately, I just don't think Connor's too bright, so he probably misses that. So maybe if he watches this in the future, Connor, I hope that explains the difference, between someone who is British, okay, British born, or someone who becomes British, a black Brit like myself, versus an English, or I've never in history called myself, oh, I'm English. I speak English, but I've never called myself English because I understand that I'm not, neither do I want to be a part of that ethnic group.
Hang on, no.
That child, because that child is black, would not be just...
No, it's because that child is Nigerian. It's not because they're black.
But it's your child. You've brought up that child.
Yes, but that doesn't mean they suddenly...
And by the way, it's absolutely because they're black. What she should have done, if she had any iota of common sense, she should have asked him that exact same scenario, but said it was a Polish child. Imagine if you adopted a Polish child who was white, and I mean, he looks like he could have some Polish ancestry, and for all intents and purposes, presented the same as an English person. You raised him as an English person with your surname. Everything about him was English. He spoke with a strong English accent, this, that, and the other. But the only people who knew about his Polish ancestry was you. Would you raise him and would you accept him as an English child? That would have been a better question. But she was too much, in her black versus white bag to be able to pull out a good analogy. Silly woman.
Become English.
Well, okay, so what is it that would be so different about that child? Let's say you have a biological child and then you have another child and you bring up both of them.
Because one has my heritage.
And that makes what difference in terms of the way in which the child behaves?
It doesn't make a difference in how they're treated. Allow me to explain. Just because you have a different heritage doesn't mean that we should treat one another with more or less moral consideration. Just like I'm not impolite to you, never have been, on or off camera.
No, I'm saying how they behave. How would they be any different?
Oh, one is more likely to have a frame of reference for the heroes that they are being taught to revere than another, because the other one, by dint of having different heritage, has an additional obstacle to overcome to consider themselves a part of our national family or even my own family.
It's your child.
Yes.
So I don't understand.
Okay. But the other point that I was making was that when...
Okay, I'm exhausted. Okay, I'm going to move on from this video now, guys. I hope you found that entertaining or somewhat interesting, and it gave you a glimpse into the political spectrum and the kind of characters that we deal with in the UK. I hope you can see how tiring it is. Yeah, for me as a black person who really shouldn't have even been a part of this conversation. They could have had this conversation, but they will pull us into it irrespective. And this is typical of UK media, typical of people in political positions of, policy making. This is what they do. They continuously pull, particularly Asians, continuously pull black people into a conversation where we don't need to be and we don't belong. And you have people like him who just think on the basis of them being English that they don't have to understand anything. They can just talk about stuff that they have zero insight about. This is like very, very typical of what you get in the UK. But anyway, I hope you found that interesting. I'm going to move on now because they're grinding my gears and we're near the end of that video anyway. I think we've heard what we need to say from both of them. I think you can say, needless to say, I'm a fan of neither. Let's move on to our next topic. Bear with me as I just pull that up. Okay, so this is we're gonna have a little bit of a flip. We're gonna have a little bit of a flip in subject here. Okay. This one might be relatively quick. Let's see how it goes. I think it's going to be relatively quick, this one. Oh, no, I need a different window, actually. Let me... Okay, let's pull this up here. Boom. So this video caught my attention while I was browsing Instagram, as you will, and I thought, okay, let me do a little reaction to this video. Yeah, let me just let it play, and then we'll just take it from there. Oh, mute. Let's unmute it. Let's go.
Have high racial and cultural self-esteem. You can't bait me into diaspora wars. You can't get me to dislike Black people from other places because they have different experiences than me. I'm a smart person. You can't do that to me. Do you see how that works? I'm a culturally informed person. I'm a socially informed person. I'm mentally fit. You can't do that to me. And the more of us that are mentally fit, culturally fit, they can't force us to do their handiwork for them. Like, skip to the part where you know. Stop trying to find arguments where there aren't arguments. At the end of the day, when it really boils down, I'm not going to spend the majority of my time fighting you. That's dumb. Stand up. Stand up now, actually. Because I have high racial.
So I'm going to let that play through again at the end of the video. But the reason that stood out to me is because I realized in 2026 is the hardest year on record to just be pro-Black, which is what I am, by the way. I'm pro-Black, and people don't like me using the term Black, and I use it deliberately. Okay, I do use the term Black deliberately, and I am pro-Black. I understand that Black is an exonym, to be very clear. So people say, oh, we didn't call us all Black, they called us Black. I understand that. I understand that Black is an exonym. But you have to understand that Black is the exonym that was used to divide us from those who do not classify themselves as Black and those who classify themselves as white, which are two different things, by the way. So they place these upon certain populations around the world, not just Africans, by the way. Polynesians and Melanesians will proudly say that they're Black. They say, I'm Black. Get rid of that. We're Black. You know, I love that about many of them. Okay. Down in the kind of like the Australasian area of the earth. They're very pro-Black. Okay. Many people across Asia are Black. The Middle East, there are Black people in the Middle East. So there are Black people all around the world. And the one thing that unifies us, obviously the Americas and Europe, etc. The one thing that unifies us is the way that we've been treated. So when I'm pro-Black, I am pro those groups. I'm obviously very pro-African. I'm obviously very pro, you know, I would say I'm pro-Yoruba, but I'm kind of like, I'm just pro-Black. That literally is my priority. That literally, and I know a lot of Black people are very tribal, and a lot of Black people are very, they only want to support the group that they belong to, but it's just not how I'm wired. It's just not how I'm built. I was built to be pro-Black. I was built to support and to identify with and to understand that as a Black person, I know and I can view you with a degree of, I'm not going to use the word empathy because it's not a thing that where I view us as any kind of like victim class, but I do understand the challenges that we face. I do understand the shared perspective and stereotypes that we have to overcome. And that's the only kind of label I want to identify with in terms of a label, like I'm Black and I am pro-Black. And like she said, I love the way she put it, so I'm going to let it play out again at the end. Like she said, I'm too self-aware, I'm too educated, and I'm too historically knowledgeable to be baited out of my position of pro-Blackness by this modern move towards culture wars, by this modern tribalistic perspective that many Black people are taking on now, where they only want to identify with a small group, or they want to create division where none historically existed. I know too much about our shared history for me to take that perspective. I'm too educated about that stuff. Okay, if I was less educated and I didn't know as much, and you know, it was my first rodeo with anything historical, you might be able to sell me this one little view or perspective on history. You might be able to sell me this and say, okay, well, screw all those other people. I'm not them. I belong here. And I totally understand. By the way, I always stress this as well. We're going to touch on Tinubu next, actually, because we are running late. We're an hour 40 in. So we'll move on to Tinubu next. And that's a very fitting place to go after this video, because Tinubu is a perfect example of someone who I absolutely despise. Someone who belongs to my ethnic group, okay, my exact and precise ethnic group. And he's an absolute devil. He's a sellout. He's useless. And he's plunging Africa, he's plunging Nigeria right back into the depths of neocolonialism, right into the center of it again. This man is a demon, and he belongs to my ethnic group. What time or space do I have to say, oh well, I'm all about being Yoruba and this? I can't, like, seriously, I'm not. I'm a pro-black guy, and do you understand what I mean? Like, I will fight against a Tinubu for the sake of the Sahelian alliance 10 out of 10 times. There's not a scenario where I'm going to, you know, back a Tinubu over a Goita. Do you understand? There's no scenario where that plays out. There's zero scenario. I'm not here to be backing the coons on some tribalistic thing. Well, as long as the Yoruba's right. Nah, screw that. You are my enemy. Yeah. My friends are the ones who are about black empowerment. They're about moving Africans forward, moving black groups forward, and understanding our joint effort to develop one African nation, one black nation, one group develops. It moves us all forward. It progresses us all forward. So I'm far too informed to fall for that okie doke. And I think she just put it really well. So I'm going to play her out. And as it's playing out, I'm going to pull up my Tinubu information.
And cultural self-esteem, you can't bait me into diaspora wars. You can't get me to dislike black people from other places because they have different experiences than me. I'm a smart person. You can't do that to me. Do you see how that works? I'm a culturally informed person. I'm a socially informed person. I'm mentally fit. You can't do that to me. And the more of us that are mentally fit, culturally fit, they can't force us to do their handiwork for them. Like, skip to the part where you know. Stop trying to find.
And I think the point she raised there is very, very clear as well. When you're focused on these things, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I think people should rejoice in doing a bit of research, understanding their genealogy, and perhaps connecting to a part of their history that has been hidden from them. So I'm not here trying to, you know, shit on any particular group. I think they all have a relative particular place in people's history and people's understanding and backstories. But when, as a result of your learning, the focus of your energy becomes other black groups, or forcing an enmity with other black groups, then, like she just said, you're just doing the bidding of the enemy. Like, do you think they're not differentiating? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So while you're out there differentiating and doing this, they're not differentiating. Then it's like, oh yeah, those idiots are fighting. Let's just do what we need to do. Let's just have our way with them. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's just when you're out there and you're doing too much against people who are essentially facing exactly the same obstacles as you, you're not doing yourself any favors. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, like that's all there is to it.
Arguments where there aren't arguments. At the end of the day, when it really boils down, I'm not going to spend the majority of my time fighting you. That's dumb. Stand up. Stand up now. actually, because I have high racial.
Okay, so shout out to her. I'm going to close that now. And what we're going to do is we're going to now focus on Tinubu, who was actually the title of this video. So many of you will argue, should have been focusing on from the start. But yeah, let's look at Tinubu, because this guy is he's a problem. I'm going to be totally frank with you. Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a massive problem. And he's just, every time I think, okay, well, he's reached his grand apex for stupidity, coonery, and foolishness. Every time I think that, I say apex, I should say, what's the opposite of an apex? The floor, whatever you want to call it. Every time I think he's reached like a point where he can get no lower, he just exceeds expectations. I'm like, wow, this guy is a problem. So he's just been plunging Nigeria into the depths of hell. So let's look at a few of his contributions, for want of a better word, and see what this moron has been up to.
Countless young people.
So this is him being, by the way, there's a big deal. Tinubu came to the UK over the past few, last week. He was here. And there was a big deal, a big reception granted to him. Like, it was massive, actually. It was massive. They rolled out the red carpet. So I knew this dude was going to act the fool. And I knew that this demon was going to do something incredibly problematic. So let's just have a little bit of a digest of what this guy has been up to and why the red carpet has been rolled out for him.
Who have flourished through the work of my King's Trust over the last 50 years.
So I don't know who that is. I'm assuming is that his kids or something. I mean, straight away, if that is his child, straight away that already is bizarre, because that presented him more as a monarch than a prime minister, because normally there should only be other ministers in any kind of, dinner or reception. Your family, what is this like? This isn't the reception of, this isn't a monarchic receipt, you know what I mean? This is bizarre. And I raised that as well because that political class in Africa, is in Nigeria in particular, it's no accident. I think they all have historic ancestry of partnership with Europe, which is what placed them into these positions. And then they are raised and indoctrinated and ingrained with this allegiance to Europe, which is what we're seeing in Tinubu. This is someone who was born into wealth. And wealth, by the way, in Nigeria, guys, is not it's not quantifiable a lot of the time. A lot of these people are billionaires before talk of billionaires became a thing. That's how rich they are off the back of Nigeria. So his kids, his offspring, a lot of these time, these devils are all cut from the same cloth, if I'm going to be totally honest with you.
Only last week, I was delighted to host a rather lively group of them for a jollof and tea party at St. James's Palace. I was firmly assured that the jollof was only the best Nigerian course.
Getting clapping like a seal. Like, this is...
Or perhaps it was Ghanaian or Senegalese.
That was actually quite sharp by Charles. Well done for getting in there on the Jollof Wars. Shout out Drego, says, I want a girlfriend that looks at me the same way he looks at European men. He got lost in Macron's eyes. Yeah, we've got to come on to that. Ultimate betrayal, by the way. Tinubu meeting with Macron at the very height of the Sahelian Alliance uprising, when we needed to show solidarity. He did the exact opposite. Something that Nigeria has always been reliable for, is to do the exact opposite of what they need to do in a situation. This is what I mean about these leaders with their historic familial allegiances to the West. Very, very problematic. But yeah, shout out to you, Drega. I appreciate that donation. Let's pop you up on the screen. And let's carry on.
Diplomatically, I cannot remember.
His Majesty, accompanied by the Queen and members of the royal family, gave a state banquet at Windsor Castle for the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the First Lady. The banquet welcomed 160 guests and had special changes to accompany Muslim guests during Ramadan and featured a meat-free meal. In his speech, King Charles talked about the importance of Nigerian culture and relations to the UK.
Let me propose a toast to the President and people of Nigeria. Niger no day carry last.
Please.
Now, flinging a little bit of pigeon in there is there's a lot. This is a red carpet that's being rolled out here, guys. I'm telling you, there's historic significance in regards to this. Means that this man is giving up a lot, or he's opening a wide door, because the English don't respect Africans enough to do this kind of pageantry unless this guy is doing some real demonism. I'm telling you right now, this is it's problematic to me. Shout out to Rainy, who's dripped me out with 14 rand, much appreciated. And he says, Tinubu watching, about to revoke citizenship. Yeah, I'm laughing, but it's like, yeah, let's move on, because when you realize what this man has done, yes, this guy's a problem, man.
Enjoy our coverage of the state banquet now.
Look at those whitewash paintings in the background. I think that's King George III there in the middle. Yeah, these whitewashed paintings of British monarchs. But yeah, we'll talk about that another day, not today. We will talk about that soon, though. And the question mark also needs to be raised here in regards to the role that the monarchy play, because England gets away so much with this false idea that the monarchy are just, symbolic and they don't hold any political power. But it was the monarchy who essentially made this visit from a Nigerian leader happen. They kind of opened the door, and it makes you question, this highlights the fact that the UK is still a dictatorship, by the way. People think the monarchy have absolute power. Okay, they have the power. The king has the power to disband parliament, like that. Okay, so if the king has power to disband parliament, I always ask people this simple question: if the king has power to disband parliament, do you think parliament is ever going to have discussions that threaten the power of the king? So you know the answer to that question is obviously no. So Parliament A is never going to have any discussions that threaten the power or the position of the king. So it's a catch-22. It's a loop that they have here. Okay, it's a circular look. Like you can't threaten the king, and the king. You're saying the king has no authority, but the king has the ultimate authority to disband Parliament. And then you say the Parliament are the ones who are ultimately in charge, but they don't have power to discuss anything that threatens the position of the king. Otherwise, they threaten being disbanded. Okay, and this is, but for those of you who think this doesn't happen, it's happened in Australia. Okay, it might not have happened in the UK. So ultimately, everything that happens in the UK is okay with the royal family or the king. He's okay with everything, every debate about immigration, this, that, and the other. He's okay with it all because ultimately he's in charge. But England would never frame it that way. They'd frame it that way when it comes to eliminating Khomeini, who also didn't hold a political office. He was a spiritual leader. They did the same thing with Gaddafi, who also didn't hold political office when they got rid of him. He was once again just a kind of like a symbolic overseer of things. Other nations can't have that. They can't have people who have the long-term interest of the nation. What they want is these rotating 4-year despots, these 4-year demons who come in, bleed the economy dry, and then leave. And then the next set come in, get everything they can, and then leave. The worst thing they want to see happen in any non-Western, non-European nation is for there to be long-standing leaders who have the long-term interests of their nation. That's exactly what they don't want. 4-year democracy suits them perfectly because they can control those with capital. But that's an entirely different conversation. That's what I'd raise the fact that it's quite symbolic that Prince Charles, or King, I should say, although he's never, I don't even like saying it, it doesn't even sound right. Charles is, hosting this. Let's quickly skip this and see if there's any more important chats that take place. Enough of the anthem. There's Camilla, the king's side piece, the king's illegitimate side piece, who now sits as queen consort in the UK. Yeah, his affair that the entire world was aware of. Who now sits on the friggin' throne of England. Isn't that something? Here we go.
Cabo Shdani.
Laughing like Rafiki. Fucking idiot.
My wife and I are delighted to welcome you to Windsor Castle here on this occasion. And we are most grateful to you for traveling during this holy month, which I acknowledge is no small sacrifice. And so it is my particular...
Look at the way he's looking at him. That is pure adoration.
Pleasure to wish you, Mr. President, peace, blessings, and an abundance of joy. And Ramadan Mubarak. Countless young people who have flourished through the work of my King's Trust over the last 50 years. Only last week, I was delighted to host a rather lively group of them for a jollof and tea party.
Okay, I think we've seen this. All right, I'm gonna skip over to the next video now. So enough of that. Let's have a look at some of the implications of this visit. Okay, let's have a look at some of the implications of this visit.
My people, the president of Nigeria has just turned on his own people. Yes, he went to the UK and had a discussion with the Prime Minister of the UK. They gave him money and he's accepted to have Nigerian removed from the UK back to Nigeria. You know, they always tell you that black people turn on other black people easily. Yes, this man here, Bola Tinubu, went to the UK. He had some dance, some food and stuff. Then they told him, brother, we can give you money, but you need to accept to have your people without having to go through long legal processes. He said, yes, no problem. So now the UK has the right to arrest you as a Nigerian if they find that you're not legal in the UK and send you back to Nigeria immediately without having to go through the police and the judicial system. Thanks.
So just to be clear on that, that sounds like a very similar approach to what ICE are taking. And do you remember what I said about the UK effectively being as racist, sometimes more racist than the States, but they're able to do it in a way that it doesn't garner any attention. So the United States is just like basically, you know, the UK's, you know, crackhead brother who just does everything in the most uncouth way, you know, just send ICE agents out and they're just shooting people in the street. UK will have exactly the same policy, but they'll do it in a very clandestine, under the radar manner, in which it doesn't get any of the same attention that it's getting elsewhere, but they're still doing the same thing. And by the way, this was first, the wheels of this were put in motion by, like I said, those, you know, those Asian Home Secretaries who were desperate to deport black people. And like I said, black people make up only 3% of the population. And I guarantee you, like, Nigerians don't make up, we're not a problematic ethnicity. We're not a problematic ethnic group. You know, we are an ethnic group that essentially end up being very educated and end up doing very well, if not already educated when they come here. This is just, you know, we're not a problematic ethnic group. Yes, I'm not saying we're perfect, but the ratio of criminals in amongst Nigerians is just, it's you know, is very much par for the course of what you'd find in the UK. So why would you agree to a deal like this? You know, why would you even want to change a deportation policy? This is all about optics. It's all about things that can be reported back in the Houses of Parliament, and it's all about getting people focusing on things that are relevant. You convince people that Rwandan men are a threat and they'll kill your 14-year-old kids. You convince people that Nigerians are only here causing mischief by the way you treat them. So if you can report this many arrests or this many deportees, all of a sudden now it looks like that's a problematic group. So they're very, very effective in the way that they commit things like this. And Tinubu's got to be aware of this. I mean, like I said, when I said I'm not sure if this guy is evil or an idiot, I'm not sure. I really am not sure, because when he talks, he sounds so entirely stupid. He just sounds like he's a part of that generation that, yeah, they're just stupid and set in their ways and stupid. And I say this because respectfully, I have people even in my family who talk like Tinubu. They're just idiots, you know, and I just like, I can't, uncle, I love you, but I cannot talk to you right now. Because when it comes to these matters, you're so flipping, like, you're so stupid. Like, oh, England has been good now. Well, look how well, we can't do nothing without there. Like that kind of mindset, it does exist. It's not like, it's not a total, you know, it's not a total like rarity in a lot of African populations, and particularly in Nigerians. It's more common than you think. People that think like him. So this is why I'm on the fence about his evilness or his stupidity. I'm not sure which one it is.
To Bola Tinubu. What's happening, everybody? I hope you're doing good. It's a beautiful day. Thank you very much for stopping. I appreciate you. My name is Zach.
Before we go into this one, in fact, I'm going to skip over this one because there's another one that kind of just like focuses in a little bit more of the deal from a technical perspective, so you guys are kind of a bit clearer on this. So let me just quickly go to that one. But respect to you, Zach Mekwesa. I appreciate the summary. It was cool. Let's go to this next one, because this will give us details about the deal itself.
Distinguished guests, it's a privilege to be here today as we strengthen the partnership between the United Kingdom and Nigeria. My apologies on behalf of Peter Kylan, Secretary of State. He has been called to Parliament at the last minute to make a statement with regards to steel, something not unconnected with what we're here to discuss and agree today. UK Export Finance is the UK's export credit agency. It helps the UK and its businesses win and deliver export contracts, and it supports partner countries to access UK goods and services for priority development and infrastructure projects. This Memorandum of Understanding is an important step. It's non-binding, but it sets out a shared direction. Nigeria's priority projects and UK Export Finance's readiness to work with you to develop a strong pipeline subject to due diligence, value for money, and the right standards. This is about practical cooperation that benefits both our countries. supporting growth, jobs and trade, while helping deliver resilient, modern infrastructure. And I look forward to the work ahead. Thank you so much.
Let me briefly also talk about the MOU, which is establishing a clear framework for deeper collaboration. Up to 9 transactions have already been identified in the health sector, in the provision of infrastructure for the security services.
So he's talking about there, and I was going to come on to this. So this is what's concerning here. Okay, so first of all, these deals, okay, first of all, 746 million. Okay, so let's just round that up. In fact, let's just say $1 billion, which is roughly what it is. Okay, 746 million pounds, roughly speaking, it's more than, but let's just say it's $1 billion. Okay, financing deal in the UK to modernize Lagos ports. So which direction is that money flowing? We already know that money is flowing from the UK to Nigeria. Now, as a UK citizen, I can tell you right now, the UK Treasury doesn't have $1 billion to give to Nigeria. It doesn't. That's what the entire immigration argument is about. It's about saving these billions, and $1 billion deal like this is something that they don't have. And this minister over here has already mentioned a health deal that Nigeria's already signed up to, and that health deal was basically to sell Nigerian health data to the West. Okay, selling Nigerians' health data against their will, by the way. No kind of like permission, just you're gonna have full access to Nigeria's data. And they've received, or are in the process of receiving, windfall sums of money for that deal as well. So what you have to understand, or at least the way I perceive it, I should say, is that this is aid, to be very, very clear. This is foreign aid, something that is never good for Africa. Okay, it's never good for Africa to have these foreign aid deals, i.e. free money coming from the British or Western taxpayers into the coffers of Nigerians. When that happens, it always comes with rampant corruption, and I guarantee you Nigeria is losing as a result of this, because whatever they're given in aid, they are gaining more than that elsewhere from other areas. So Nigeria, Tinubu has been going around Europe for some reason with his begging bowl out, collecting these giant sums of aid from Western leaders, just out there, give me money. What do you want? You could take it, or sign this, or yo, come develop. No, yeah, just out there with his begging bowl. Nigeria could generate $1 billion in its oil revenues. It wouldn't take very long. Okay, in a month, yeah, it could generate $1 billion in oil revenues to pay for these modernization of Lagos ports. We don't need to sign a deal with our ex-colony, with our neo-colonial master. That didn't need to happen. It could be done independently, but it's not being done independently. It's once again reaffirming and restating these old colonial ties, and it's doing it in an aid way as well. When one nation is the one that is parting with cash and giving it to another nation, that's not a trade deal. Okay, you haven't said what Nigeria is given. You haven't said what Nigeria is given to the UK. You've said, oh yeah, so we're modernizing their ports, we're giving them all this money. That's aid. That's aid, and we all know what that comes with. It comes at the detriment of the Nigerian people, and it probably all flows into Tinubu and his family's pockets. It's just anyway. Let's just carry on.
Major highways that will open up the country and open up the economy, including the agricultural sector. So this MOU does focus on infrastructure, on energy, and industrial development, which of course is the key at this stage for Nigeria to grow its industries, take advantage of the new bilateralism that is now what is being emphasized the world over compared to multilateralism. And of course, that will bring the investments that will grow the economy, create jobs, and lift.
So is he suggesting that having a single trading partner is advantageous to having multiple trading partners? Was that someone correct me if I'm wrong, but is that the point he was making about that it's better that they work in a bilateral way as opposed to multilateral way? So he's trying to, I don't understand. Is that what he was just saying? I could have totally missed that. I might have gone over my head. So please let me know in the chat if you interpreted that the same way. Is he suggesting that it's better for Nigeria to have one-to-one trade agreements as opposed to being able to trade on an open market? I don't understand.
People out of poverty in their millions, which is the overall aim of the macroeconomic agenda, what we call the Renewed Hope Agenda and Action Plan of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So this MOU aligns with our goal to mobilize investment, mobilize capital at scale, I would say. And for our UK partners, of course, it creates a stronger pipeline of bankable transactions that UKEF can look at and readily support. And it also expands the role for UK companies to participate and benefit from Nigeria's growth. So our key message is that we're moving.
So that sounded to me like code for allowing, UK, the usual suspects in terms of extraction organizations, mining organizations, oil companies to participate more easily. And, what are we shipping? What goods are we shipping? What is Nigeria producing? What is Nigeria manufacturing? Can we stop pretending like Nigeria has this whole suite of goods that they're producing? You're talking about basically selling Nigeria's natural resources to UK companies, and that's why you want to make port enhancements and this, that, and the other. And you want to do it bilaterally. You don't want to do it, with like this. It sounds like dressed up coonery. I could just be hearing this wrong, by the way, guys. I'm not pretending like I fully am all fair with everything that's been, but that's how I'm hearing this right now. It sounds very problematic.
From reform to investment to growth. Finally, let me say that these agreements reflect a shared and deep common trust. We have a common history, and we're now looking at investments at scale based on that trust and the commitment to deliver.
Investment at scale. This is it's just headache. Why do you need aid? Why do you need aid? Why do you need aid? This is, yes, this is absolutely despicable. And it's true with the enhancement to, this is once again Nigeria showing its treacherous hand. Because someone just made a very good point. I'm going to put your point up on the screen here. Okay, so shout out to you, P.E. YOLO, who says, so this is how the UK might try to avoid Iran war consequences. And I think you're onto something here, because this would be part and parcel the reason as to why Nigeria has been targeted. They are trying to secure, the upscaling of exports of crude oil and exports of other minerals, but probably focus on crude oil, so that should the Strait of Hormuz remain closed or that region of the earth remain problematic, they can fall back on Nigeria, who has upscaled themselves to basically export far more than they're exporting at the moment. And that might also paint the picture as to why they're willing to pay for those enhancements to be made. And why that really pisses me off is because this will show once again Nigeria picking sides with the colonies. They do it time and time again. When it came to the invasion of Gaddafi, they supported it. When it came to the invasion of the Ivory Coast by the French, they did nothing. When it came to the AES alliance and the uprising in Benin, they quelled that. And then they invited France and they shook hands with the French, even though Nigeria has historically never had trade agreements with France. Never had trade agreements with France. We're not a francophone nation. but made new deals just to spit in the face of our African brothers who were fighting against him. And now a war has been declared on Iran, and Nigeria is there straight away. Even when Mugabe kicked out those white farmers, guess the nation that invited them in and said, build your farms here. And everyone, all the idiots are going, oh, this is such a wise move. Oh, we are getting the farmers. How has that benefited the Nigerian people having them white farmers? How did that work out? How did that work out for Nigeria? Did Nigeria become the breadbasket it was supposed to become? No, it just meant that you have no solidarity. I'm telling you, it is a very, very difficult job being a proud Nigerian in 2026. It's hard to do.
Tangible economic outcomes, both for Nigeria and for the United Kingdom. I thank you for listening.
So let's move on to another one. Since we're on the topic of Tinubu, let's see how Tinubu describes himself.
If you weren't running for president, which of your two major opponents would you be voting for?
None.
Why not?
None of them is qualified except me.
What are you going to do different? Why should Nigerians be voting for you?
Because I'm different. I am Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I'm
saying nothing. He's saying nothing here. Remember, this is his campaign. Yeah, this is his campaign for the presidency. And listen to what he has to say. It's like I was gonna say it's like Donald Trump, but without less substance. Listen to this man.
Very, very confident. I'm the front runner.
You're a very wealthy man.
How do you know?
Well, you know, I mean,
you are not my accountant.
I'm not in your account.
I am investigated the record in Lagos. What's wrong with that?
And I want to move away from that.
It's envy.
I think you've kind of explained that.
Chaos is easy. So bring normalcy and redecorate. It's more difficult.
So we know what normalcy looks like for this guy here. So bringing normalcy is more difficult, but we can see what normalcy is to him. Okay, it's recolonization of Africa, you know, and we saw that with the bombing of Nigeria, which is something I didn't even mention earlier. Okay, allowing the US to bomb Niger. I say Nigeria, but really it was about bombing Niger and sending a message to the AES alliance that they were going to be taking sides with France, military side, to stop the spread of that movement and quelling the uprising that would have hit Benin had they not intervened. So did you know, here's another one. Okay, so here's another one in case you didn't know. Okay, now this is going back a little while, but you should know about this. If you
very happy to receive it on behalf of not only myself, but the incredible team at the foundation.
Acknowledge one of the greatest human beings that the world has brought. All I need to say is thank you.
He's talking about Bill Gates here, guys. Bill Gates. Tinubu gave Bill Gates the highest honor, awarded him with the highest honor. Okay. And this was leading up to the health deal, which Bill Gates was at the center of, by the way, to extract Africa's health data and sell it. So Tinubu has just been going around shaking hands with the most evil people in the world, selling every part of Africa that he could sell. Anything that he can monetize, he's just selling to the old colonial forces and like doing it without any regard for Nigeria's people, without any regard for the effect and the impact, the long-term impact in Africa. This man is so wicked. I can't honestly, I'm losing the superlatives to describe how much of a negative impact he's having, because Nigerians right now in Nigeria are having a horrible time. The economy is horrible because of this man. So it's not even like there's a domestic payoff for all of this global coonery. It's like he's on a mission to do as much damage in as short a period of time as possible. He just flabbergasted, giving an award to Bill Gates, yeah, and you can hear the way how gushingly he's speaking about him.
Bill Gates, for your indivisible commitment to humanity.
Very happy to receive
Bill
it
Gates, who openly boasted on TV about the fact that he's made 10 times the amount of money with his vaccine program in Africa as he did selling any software. Yeah, and bear in mind, Microsoft was the, historically was the Apple of the world. Okay, where every computer was installed Microsoft, and he was a multi-billionaire before those things, even before billionaires were really even a thing. And he's saying, nah, forget that money. I make far more money poisoning Africa than I ever did doing anything else. This man thinks he owns Africa. He thinks he has rights over the control of the population, over the control of the fertility of the women, over the control of the health of the babies. This man is a wicked demon, and he's given him Nigeria's highest award he's given him there.
on behalf of not only myself, but the incredible team at the foundation.
Acknowledge one of the greatest human beings that.
So there you go. You've seen that. We don't need to see it again. Let's look at another video. This one is obviously what we've spoken about already. And this is Tinubu in the face of
very happy to receive it on behalf of not only.
What's that? That's the same one. So I've copied the wrong one. Oh, didn't copy. Let's try again. So this is Tinubu, France, arriving in France, yeah. You know, ready to do new deals where none historically existed, in the face of Africa rising up to overthrow, you know, Francophone Africa, and to overthrow the, you know, the African franc, which has been used to destroy African native economies and to enrich France for no reason whatsoever. And here comes Tinubu, the hero, to do what? Do you want to sign a similar deal? Do you want to become a Francophone nation? Like, what the frig is this man doing? He's such a demon. Doesn't want to load. Let me see if I can skip it forward. Okay. Well, actually, I don't mind it not loading because I've kind of reached the end there. But yeah, just wanted to kind of highlight some of the new deals. Well, the new deal that was struck with the UK, and the problematic role that Tinubu is, or the problematic stance that Tinubu is taking with all of the old colonies. He's signed military agreements to have Africa or Nigeria bombed and to enhance the US military presence in Nigeria, something that no one was asking for. He's signed trade deals with France. He's shaken hands and signed health deals with Bill Gates. He's signed new port development deals with the UK. There's just no area where he's not willing to collaborate with the colonial old world or the imperial old world. He's just literally building back bridges where time has allowed those connections to crumble and liberated Nigeria somewhat to trade with others. And him and his ministers are making it clear they don't want to trade with others. They want to reestablish these old trade agreements with these exploitative trade agreements that are based on aid and free money coming flowing in from the West so that they can exploit and take what they need from Africa. He really is a demon. And on top of that, his aggression, because you have to frame it like that. He's showing aggression towards surrounding African nations. He's showing aggression. He's showing a willingness to side militarily against our interests. This man is such a problem. Such a problem. But there you go. That's where we are right now, guys. What can I say? I think we'll call it a day there. It's been a relatively long stream, 2.5 hours. But what I'm going to try and do, if the quality of the stream or the quality of the recording is okay, is I'm going to try and cut these up into separate videos, each topic into a separate video. So we'll see how that plans out. I want to give a quick shout out to all of you who joined me. I don't know how many of you managed to stay for the whole stream, but shout out Dregger and shout out Rainy for your contributions and your donations. They are very much appreciated. Feel free to join the members. Those who become members of the group will have their comments automatically highlighted. So feel free to join me on this research and sign up for a membership. Kick that off, would be amazing if I get some members on this channel. But I think that's it. We'll call it a day. I'll try and get some new content up in the next 24 to 48 hours. Hopefully see a whole rash of videos go up. But thank you for joining me today, guys. I've really enjoyed the live stream with you. Have a fantastic whatever remains of your weekend. And yeah, I've really enjoyed going through this with you, and the conversation that's been taking place has been pretty healthy. Shout out to you. Let me quickly just see this comment here. But I had 3 subscribers. Gates family is behind Planned Parenthood. They want to exterminate black people. Envy as black is pure Homo sapien and the founder of the future species. Well, I'm not going to argue with that. Macy, shout out to you. She says, thanks, TKM. Appreciate you, Macy. And yeah, the rest of you who've just been in here, it's been good. But let's call it a day, guys. Have a fantastic afternoon, evening, morning, whatever time it is you're tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one. Oh, I'm doing a live stream in the next half an hour. So just if you're online, I'll be live streaming, but I'll be live streaming on my main channel, The King's Monologue. I've got a guest who'll be coming on as well. It's going to be a good one. So if you can make that, feel free to join me there. All right, guys, catch you later. Peace.